In professional sports, dynasties are, well, they're just so rare. But for one team, from the pretty small market of San Antonio, sustained excellence wasn't just some brief phase, it was their standard for more than 2 decades. So today, we're going to dive into the unlikely story of the Spurs and the unique formula they used to build one of the most dominant and honestly respected dynasties in all of sports history.
22. Just think about that number for a second. That is how many seasons in a row the San Antonio Spurs made the NBA playoffs. It ties the all-time league record. I mean, it's just a staggering feat of consistency that really defines this franchise. But as incredible as that number is, it's really just the beginning of their story.
The scale of their dominance is kind of hard to wrap your head around. We're talking 5 NBA championships and a record 18 straight 50-win seasons. But look at that last point. For a 30-year stretch, they had the best record not just in the NBA, but in any major American professional sport. This wasn't just a great basketball team, it was a statistical marvel that went way beyond its own league.
So, that's the big question, right? How did they pull this off? How did a team from San Antonio consistently outperform these glamour franchises from places like New York, LA, and Chicago? Well, the answer is this fascinating mix of smart decisions, some unbelievable luck, and a culture that was truly unlike anything else in pro sports. Okay, so to really get what the Spurs are all about, we have to go way back to their roots, a time before they were even in the NBA, when they were starting out in a rival league. Believe it or not, this team actually started out as the Dallas Chaparrals in the old upstart ABA. After kind of struggling to find a fan base up in Dallas, a group of businessmen from San Antonio brought the team south in 1973. And the city, they immediately fell in love with the newly named Spurs. That passion from the fans helped them become one of only 4 ABA teams to actually survive the league's merger with the NBA in '76.
And look, they didn't just join the league. They brought a totally different style with them. And early coach Bob Bass encouraged this fast-paced, really exciting brand of basketball. This wasn't some rigid, slow-it-down kind of team. Nope. This was, as he put it, schoolyard basketball at the highest level. And it was all built around one guy.
And that guy was George Gervin, nicknamed the Iceman for his super cool demeanor and that silky smooth finger roll. Gervin was the franchise's very first superstar. He won 4 NBA scoring titles and put the Spurs on the map, not just as a fun team to watch, but as a legitimate threat in the league. He was the foundation of everything.
But, after the Gervin era ended, the team really fell on hard times. They were actually on the brink of being relocated until another franchise-altering player arrived and quite literally saved the day.
From 1985 to 1989, the Spurs were in a total freefall, becoming one of the worst teams in the entire NBA. Attendance dropped as the losses just kept piling up. But their absolute rock bottom, a disastrous 21-win season in 1989, turned out to be a blessing in disguise, delivering the #1 draft pick and a real shot at salvation.
And that salvation came in the form of a center from the Navy, David Robinson. Now, the Spurs drafted the Admiral in '87, but had to wait 2 whole years for him to finish his military service. Let me tell you, he was worth the wait. With Robinson on the court, the team's win total leaped from 21 all the way to 56. That was the biggest single-season turnaround in NBA history. The franchise was officially saved.
So, with Robinson as the anchor, the Spurs were always contenders. But to get over that final hump, they needed one more piece. And just like with Robinson, it came from a moment of pure, painful adversity.
The '96-'97 season was just a catastrophe. David Robinson got injured and missed almost the entire year. The team completely tanked, finishing with a 20-62 record. It was another dark time, but it came with this massive silver lining. They won the draft lottery and the right to pick another generational talent, Tim Duncan.
And just like that, the Twin Towers were born. Pairing the veteran David Robinson with the rookie Tim Duncan created one of the most formidable front courts the league had ever seen. I mean, they were just an intimidating force on both ends of the floor.
But why did this pairing work so well? It went way beyond just their height. They were both incredibly skilled passers and scorers, and they anchored a lockdown defense. But maybe most importantly, these two superstars, who basically played the same position, they just checked their egos at the door and learned to complement each other perfectly.
And the result of all that? Well, in just their second season together, Duncan and Robinson led the Spurs to the promised land. They captured the 1999 NBA title, the first in the franchise's history. San Antonio was finally on top of the basketball world.
Robinson would retire after winning a second title in 2003. But here's the crazy part. The dynasty was far from over. In fact, it was just getting warmed up. The team's next evolution will be defined by an international trio that completely took the league by storm. So now you have Tim Duncan, and he's joined by two pretty unheralded international draft picks, a super speedy point guard from France named Tony Parker, and a fearless, crafty guard from Argentina named Manu Ginobili. Together, they formed the legendary Big Three. And their success was immediate. This photo right here, this captures their visit to the White House after the 2003 championship, which was David Robinson's last season. This title really marked a seamless passing of the torch, from the Twin Towers to the reign of the Big Three. And that trio would go on to dominate the league for the next decade, winning 3 more titles together. But man, their run was not without some serious pain. In 2013, they were literally seconds away from their 5th championship against the Miami Heat. They had a 5-point lead with just 28 seconds to go. But a series of mishaps and an absolute miracle shot by Miami's Ray Allen sent the game to overtime, and the Spurs ultimately lost in a devastating Game 7.
For almost any other team, a loss like that, it could just break you. The Big Three were all getting older. Was their championship window slammed shut for good? I mean, could they possibly come back from that kind of heartbreak?
Well, the answer was a resounding yes. The very next season, the Spurs met the Heat in the finals again. But this time, they didn't just win, they absolutely dominated them, winning in 5 games. It was the ultimate redemption story, and it also showed off the Spurs' incredible ability to evolve. The finals MVP wasn't Duncan, Parker, or Ginobili. It was a quiet young forward named Kawhi Leonard, signaling that the torch was being passed yet again.
So, when you step back and you look at this incredible run of nearly 25 years of sustained winning, you have to ask, what was the secret sauce? What was the common thread through all these different eras?
Well, it all comes down to what people call the Spurs way, and it's built on 3 pillars. First, coaching. Gregg Popovich, the one constant who demanded excellence and accountability from everybody. Second, drafting. They weren't just great at hitting on their lottery picks, but at finding these international gems like Parker and Ginobili that other teams just completely overlooked. And finally, culture. A truly team-first system where superstars check their egos and everyone, from the star player to the last guy on the bench, bought in completely.
Eventually, the Spurs' historic playoff streak did come to an end, but the principles of their dynasty, they still remain a blueprint for success. As they now rebuild around a new generation of talent, it leaves us with a really compelling question for sports today. In an age of player empowerment and constant roster turnover, is a dynasty built on loyalty and long-term culture even possible anymore?